Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om 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 Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om to everybody. Whenever we are prompted to involve in any activity, the Lord Almighty, who is seated within, prompts us to chant His name, the holy and all-powerful Rama. In order that we get the right perspective while chanting the Rama, in order that we derive the same benefit which He got it from chanting Rama, Papa keeps on every day bringing before us his different approach to the Ram Nam chanting. So every time we have to check up whether this can be tried, this can be tried, this can be tried. He says, when you repeat the name, you feel that you are doing it by His grace. Grace is always there. You only become aware of the grace. That awareness itself is grace. Grace is pouring on you day and night. When you become aware of it, you think grace has come to you and you take His name. Afterwards it grows in intensity day by day. Then your mind ceases to waver. When Ramdas started Ramnam in 1922, he began to feel that some mysterious power within him was making him repeat the name. And he became more and more conscious of that power as days passed. When Ramdas started Ramnam in 1922, he began to feel that some mysterious power within him was making him repeat the name. And he became more and more conscious of that power as days passed. The ego diminished gradually and God took full possession of him. Naturally, people like us, when we sit before Him, we keep on asking questions. So like that, the devotee asked, was Papa doing silent repetition or chanting aloud? Papa. Ramdas was singing Ramnam to himself in a low tune. And he was listening to the sound coming out of the chanting. That gave him concentration of mind. He had also a keen longing for God. You can sit here. You can sit here. You can sit there. Ramdas was singing Ramnam to himself in a low tune. And he was listening to the sound coming out of the chanting. That gave him concentration of mind. He also had a keen longing for God. His whole attention was on the sound of the name. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Low tune. While chanting, we have been asked to hear the chanting. Concentration is on the sound. He knew the sound would lead him to God. These two things, faith and longing, made him enjoy the sweetness. The mind was full of the sound as well as the longing for God. He had no desires or attractions for the things of the world. He used to go into solitude, and all day and night he was repeating the name. The mind got absorbed, losing consciousness of the body. This itself was meditation. This itself was samadhi. He was experiencing an ecstasy which was unspeakable. So 2-3 suggestions now. Normally we have a tendency to say, please bless us. Unless your grace is there, we cannot do it. This is what we normally do when we go to a temple or to a Mahatma. We seek their blessings. And what does the Mahatma say? Blessings are always there. Grace is always there. We are not aware of it. The very fact that we are praying to Him, the very fact that we are chanting His name is because of His grace. So and how do we know? Then he says, right from the start he was aware that a mysterious power was prompting him to chant. So at the time of chanting, if it's possible we try, otherwise during the gap. Whatever Papa has experimented, we can do that. And if that is what is the path allotted to us, then we will try. Otherwise, that path will lead to our own path. Sure. So we go by the path suggested by them. If it is okay for us, He will continue to prompt us to do. Or if the equipment is not receptive to that extent, our longing, our earnestness will definitely help us to know that He is evolving a new line for us. So this is where the longing comes, Faith and longing, he said. Ramdas was singing Ramnam to himself in a low tune, and he was listening to the sound coming out of the chanting. That gave him the concentration of mind. Trying to hear our own chanting. so that the mind does not go out. If we are not hearing our own, that means the mind is going out, That's all. So he says, Ramdas was singing Ramnam to himself in a low tune, and he was listening to the sound coming out of the chanting. That gave him concentration of mind. He had also a keen longing for God. His whole attention was on the sound of the name. He knew the sound would lead him to God. These two things, faith and longing, made him enjoy the sweetness. Even today when he says sweetness, we find it difficult to understand that word. Our mind gives a lot of interpretations to that word sweetness. So what? Are we enjoying the sweetness? No. How to do that? He is giving us a clue here. Faith and longing made him enjoy the sweetness. The mind was full of the sound as well as the longing for God. It may be difficult for us to understand these words. How to do it simultaneously? Literal meaning probably we may be able to sort it out after so many reading and manana. But the real experiential revelation, how will it come? The mind was full of sound as well as the longing for God. Next he answers, we also would like to have this longing and faith. We have faith. Longing for God, whether it is intense or not, that we don't know. Why? Next line answers that. He had no desire or attraction for the things of the world. He used to go into solitude, and all day and night he was repeating the name. The mind got absorbed, losing consciousness of the body. This itself was meditation. This itself was samadhi. He was experiencing an ecstasy which was unspeakable. Again, people like us will ask, how to get this dispassion. We'll keep on asking. Because now, theoretically, intellectually, it is clear now that dispassion will lead to longing. So, how to get that dispassion? If you have intense devotion for God, the mind will be in quest of God, practicing some method by which the mind can flow continuously toward God and God alone until you realize it. So dispassion will lead to sweetness. Faith and longing gives sweetness. So faith and longing, how can it come? Only when there is dispassion. How can dispassion come? Intensity to realize it. Such intense hunger for God brings about dispassion for things of the world. Otherwise your struggle becomes prolonged. The more intense the aspiration, the less the time for attaining God. A consuming or burning aspiration for God must be there. Then Vairagya follows. It is God's gift. Man struggles but does not succeed. He cannot by himself get that detachment born of intense aspiration for God. That aspiration will keep you awake day and night. Sleep leaves your eyes altogether. Your thirst for God is so great. Example is given of a thief who at midnight has entered the house of a rich man and is sitting and waiting in the room adjoining the one in which there is a safe containing a lot of cash and ornaments. He is trying to find an opportunity to get at them after the inmates have gone to rest. Do you think he will sleep? He cannot sleep. So also the devotee will be awake until he gets God. He cannot get sleep. He wants to have him soon. He wants him here and now. Such is his hunger for God. In that state, how can he think of other things? Sleep or comfort or sense enjoyment. All are forgotten until he achieves God. After that also he has no attractions. He enjoys eternal bliss. What are these sense pleasures then? They have no meaning for him. Such devotion and such dispassion can come to us only by God's grace or a saint's grace. Both mean the same thing. Next question. Why don't you give such a type of devotion to us? Papa, Ramdas is giving out all his spiritual influence for the uplift of others. Ramdas cannot see defects in you. His mere look should do the wonder, provided the recipient is prepared to receive. Intellectually, to understand, we have one more example nowadays. We are sitting before a laptop. Internet is connected here. Internet is there, You are not visible. From there to draw it, we need to connect ourselves, though it is available in the atmosphere. Similarly, his grace is there, but we should become, the receptivity should be there. Just because I don't get it, can I deny it? These are some of the thoughts for food for thoughts. It is available everywhere, but if it is to be made available to me, I should connect myself. Wi-Fi should be there. Wi-Fi is the one which connects me. I may be having a laptop and I am there. But somebody is giving this message. I will receive it only if the Wi-Fi is there and tuned properly to that particular session program. Intellectually we can understand all this. It might help us, no doubt. So Papa says, Ramdas is giving out all his spiritual influence for the uplift of others. It is available. We were sharing a few days back that even during this corona period, even otherwise Ashram does not do anything for publicity, Only when God prompts them to get in touch with us, we contact them. This applies to all our publications. We don't advertise, we don't inform people. But still, at least, people were coming and going, it was passing on. But during this corona period, when the visiting devotees are not there, no new people, they have been ordering for the books. Especially in quest of God, Papa, first. How do we find the answer for this? They get connected with him, His spiritual influence is there. Even after shedding his body, the spiritual influence is still there. And those who are destined or who are blessed to have that connection, they immediately write to send us an email from Netherlands, from USA, from Spain, from Portugal, India of course. We are quoting a few. Because morning we happen to go through a list. That is why it is so fresh in our mind. When he says, Ramdas is giving out all his spiritual influence for the uplift of others, his mere look should do the wonder provided the recipient is prepared to receive. If we look at him as an individual, we don't receive. If we look at the body through which the Lord Almighty is communicating, suppose we have that, then we have become the recipient. Even today it is going on. No? Not only Papa, all Mahatmas. Their influence is still there in the atmosphere. And those who are blessed to have this connection, they derive. We cannot say the why and whereof. We cannot rationalize. There is no logic behind it. So what do we do then? We intensely pray to Him for His grace, to make us aware of His grace. That is enough. It means that He wishes God to reveal Himself in the heart of everyone. Ramdas is here not to condemn people. Seeing God everywhere is the only way of awakening people to the consciousness of God. For him, the world was entirely at that time forgotten. Like one utterly mad, he was moving in strange places among strange people. He had no other thought in the mind except Ram, Ram, Ram. This condition was given by Ram alone. Even if he had striven, he would not have got it. Some people resolve, I will do just like Ramdas. But they go wandering for 1 or 2 days and return home. The home life, home comfort draws them back. Ramdas has seen many such cases. They never attempt to leave the house again. It is not possible to imitate another. The strong urge must be created by God Himself in you. And He must see to it that you are detached until you realize God. After that you see the world with a different vision. So these are some of the points on which we have to do intense manana. Mention which is there? Grace, chanting, concentration, faith and longing, and finally, our attempts will not help us. So we have to intensely pray to Him, These are all the points that Papa wants us today to concentrate upon. We also thought of sharing Vinobaji's words. We all feel we are all sadhakas, And each one has cut out a path of sadhana for oneself. But many a times we feel, you lost your network. Oh, see, testing. So we feel we are. So we all feel we are all sadhakas, and in our own way we have labelled things as sadhana. But still, many a time we feel either it is not sufficient or it is not adequate. But still we feel we are not moved towards our goal. So in order that we get some clarity on this, Vinobaji on the last 18th chapter, he makes a mention about sadhana. In short, if you aspire for the fulfillment of your life, The principle of renunciation of fruit of action will free you from all the worries. It would show you the right path. This principle also tells us the bounds within which to act. When we have this guiding light with us, we shall know what to do, what to discard, what to change, and when, and so on. First thing is renunciation of the fruits of our action. Each one has to cut out the practice. Nobody can follow anybody on this. Because it is purely an internal evolution. 99.99% of our activities are based on the fruits. Probably it may not be a self-interest. No, it will not be based on the self, not self. It may be for a broader purpose also. But still there is, we are thinking, we are expecting that this should happen, this should happen, this should happen. Now we watch for ourselves. When it does not happen, it punctures our enthusiasm. We get depressed. We lose our faith for a time being. Again we are back again. Okay, because of the grace of the Lord who has prompted us to take up this sadhana. But for a moment we are shaken. So how to ensure that we don't concentrate upon the fruit of action? Intellectually again there is an answer. Answer is, we are prompted to act, thus we act. There is no prefix or suffix after that. We are prompted to now talk, thus. He facilitates everything. Every time suppose we keep on bringing this, again we say, intellectually we can understand that you will be free from the craving for the fruits of action. Because if the craving is not stopped, there will be again this, ebb and flow. It goes up, comes down, goes up, comes down. Whether it is on the individual level or on the universal level. In universal level, we call it a social service, We had direct contact with some of the people who were leading a noble life, selfless. And they have been instrumental in bringing about so many social reforms. But at the end, they are not, the fulfillment is not there. There is some craving somewhere in the mind. The fruit of action should be that. Papa and Mataji, they were prompted, they were not directly prompted. Somebody would have come and suggested, this is a backward area. There is no school for the inhabitants were very poor people. They had no access to education. It was when Papa okayed the proposal, 1 anna, 2 anna, 5 anna, there was, rupees anna spice, not the paise now. If you go through the earlier volumes of the vision, you will find every month they were giving a statement of accounts, where people have contributed 2 annas, 5 annas, 1 rupee, 4 annas, like that. Like that it was built to the school. But Papa, they did not have any attachment towards that institution. As long as they were in direct management, they tried to bring this dimension in them. When they knew that it is outgrown, they did not have a second thought to hand it over to the government. Same case with the hospital. We are now happy, the lower primary school was upgraded to the higher primary, then secondary, and now higher secondary. Hospital, there was absolutely no medical facility here. Somebody suggested to Papa, okay, same way. Devotees from different parts of India, and that was they contributed their might in such a manner. And then it was built, beautiful structure. One doctor came forward, and later on, when Papa Mataji knew, intuitively, that it is better ashram withdraws from itself, it was handed over to the government. Now it is functioning wonderfully well. We never heard anything about this from Mataji or Puja Swamiji. When we started digging out only, we came to know all these details, and then further we wanted to check up with Swamiji, that's all. That means ashram forgets the moment it is handed over. So also there was no vocational training center. People had no training for picking out their livelihood. Since Papa had some experience in this textile engineering, probably we feel that he would have suggested, okay, if you want, you can have this. Immediately, with so many looms, the Udyogashala, like this, 1 anna, 2 anna, 5 anna from different parts of the country, people have contributed, and a huge infrastructure was built on those days. And when the time came, that was also handed over. When we remember about renunciation of the fruit of action, unlike today the resources are there, the mode of communication is there, so many things, nothing was there during that time. Ashram itself was finding it difficult to exist, in the sense, materially. But this did not deter them, So we try to go, what is this good? Action without aiming at the fruits of action. No grievance, no complaints. We all had the privilege of sitting in Mataji's room. And she was sharing so many things to others, she made her to hear. Nowhere we have found any of these things. And when anybody comes from these institutions, they are given the same, at no time, that we have seen in Puja Swamiji's period. At no time, we have nothing to do with this. We have already handed over. Even today, the same legacy goes on. Handing it over, when we hand over, probably we may have some depression, we may have, we have built it up, so much strain, all those things will be there, Nothing. So the first thing Vinobaji wants us to know, that in sadhana, the first thing, important thing is, absence of the craving for fruits of action. But it doesn't mean cessation of activity. The principle of renunciation of the fruit should be applied. Our life is so wonderfully fashioned that we would get what we want even without paying any attention to it. Moksha is the highest fulfillment of life. But one must not covet even moksha. See the difference. Or that state of akarma. That state would be reached without one being aware of it. A bhakta always says to the Lord, Bhakti is enough for me. I do not have desire for moksha, the ultimate fruit of sadhana. After all, moksha too is a kind of a fruit, something that is to be enjoyed. It too must be renounced. In Nirvana Shagam, Shankaracharya says, na punyam, na papam, na saukyam, na dukkam, na mantram, na tirtam, na vedam, na yajnam, aham bhojanam neva bhojyam na bhukta, na me dvesha ragavu, na me lopamohu, madhoneva, meneva, matrya bhavam, na dharmam, na chartam, na kamam, na moksham. Chitananda Rupam Shivoham Shiva. But when we renounce moksha, it will not move away from us. It will be more surely ours. Only when you give up the desire for moksha, you will advance towards it without your being aware of it. Let sadhana be done with such a single-minded dedication that there is no thought of moksha in the mind. Then moksha itself will seek you. Let the seeker be totally immersed in his sadhana. The Lord had already said, Mate Sangho Sakarmani. You should not covet the state of akarma also. Aham tva sarva bhavebhyo mokshayishyami masutaha. I shall release you from all sins, be not grieved. I am here to accord you moksha. Forget about moksha. Be concerned about your sadhana. Sadhana will attain perfection when you get moksha. And then moksha will itself be attracted to you. Moksha Lakshmi garlands him who is not concerned about her and is not fully absorbed in his sadhana without any thought of moksha in his mind. When sadhana reaches its zenith, the moment of fulfillment comes. If a man in the forest wants to reach home, but just keeps sitting under a tree in the forest chanting home, home, home all the while, the home will remain away. Chanting home, home all the while. No? If he succumbs to the temptation of rest, he will miss the ultimate rest. He should keep on walking. Eventually he will find his home right in front of him. If I lose myself in dreaming about moksha and relax, slacken my sadhana, moksha will remain distant. The surest way to attain moksha is to fling away any aspiration for it and concentrate on sadhana. One must not hanker after the ultimate rest, after the state of akarma. Here, love for your sadhana, and then moksha will be yours without fail. You cannot solve a problem by shouting for the answer. You should rather stick to the correct method that will step by step lead you to the answer. How can you reach the end before the completion of the process? How can you have an answer without following the method fully? How can you attain the state of liberation when you are still a seeker? When one is struggling for life in a flooded river, will it do if he thinks of the pleasures awaiting him on the other bank? At that time, all the attention should be riveted on swimming. All the strength should be applied to inch toward the other bank. Sadhana should be carried to the end. The ocean should be crossed. You will find moksha there waiting for you. All the activities drop off in the final state of jnani. But this does not mean that in the final state there would be complete absence of activity. Activities may take place. This final state is extremely fascinating and sublime. Jnani is not concerned about what is taking place in that state. Only that which is invariably pure, good and beneficial will take place. Jnani stands at the zenith of sadhana. There he would be untouched by all actions, even while doing them. He may even bring about destruction, and yet he will not be the destroyer. Even if he does good, he will not be the benefactor. We remember that Annadhanam Shiva, in Tamil Nadu. Father narrated us to us when we were children. There was a noble man called Shivan. He is called Annadhanam. He goes, on those days, there was starvation. So he goes from village to village He has got only one upper cloth and a wearing cloth, that's all. He will go. But because of his radiance, that is from his face, from his personality, from his touch of love in everything, people spontaneously offer him whatever he wants. So he will say, tomorrow there will be Annadana for the entire people nearby. Everybody will immediately come forward with whatever they have. They may come forward with rice, with pulses, with vegetables, and everybody will join. He will be the chief man guiding them. And at exactly in the noon, when everybody, it will be tom-tomming will be there, so that everybody comes there for meal. And he will see to it that everybody is served. He will not take food there. He will go to the next village and get some rickshaw and eat. Even if it does, he will not be the benefactor. Highest form, Phalabheksha is not there. The final state of moksha is the zenith of sadhana. In this state, sadhana becomes natural, effortless. Then there is not even the thought that I am doing something. This final state of realization, siddhavastha, is not a state of morality. A child speaks the truth. It is not a moral act, as he has no idea of untruth. To speak truth while being aware of untruth is a moral act. To speak truth while being aware of untruth is a moral act. In the final stage, untruth does not exist. Truth alone exists. So there is no question of morality. What is forbidden, what is worth abjuring comes nowhere in the picture. Ears do not hear what should not be heard. Eyes do not see what should not be seen. Only that gets done which ought to be done. One does not have to do it consciously. One need not have to avoid consciously what is worth avoiding. But it does get avoided. It is in this culmination of sadhana, when it has become natural, amoral, you may call it supramoral, that morality reaches the supreme height. We may call this state of sattvic sadhana, wherein sattva has been transcended. That is why Videna Gunatitam, Bhavaditam, all these we used to repeat in slokas, It is not that they are going away, no. It becomes a sahajavastha, so we are not even aware of it. That is why it is not to be targeted. It is an internal evolution, internal graduation. So here, Vinobaji says bhakti, when the bhakti is at its supreme zenith, the bhakta does not need anything else. Only the love for God is there, that's all. So we pray to him. Why don't you please remove the dirts or roadblocks? I am essentially a bhakta, but I have forgotten that I am a bhakta. I think I am an individual. And my definition of bhakti is different. I pray only when something is needed. That is not the real bhakti. Initially it has helped me to develop faith, but I got stuck somewhere. So kindly remove that which blocks this bhakti. We need not ask anything else. That's what he says. The final stage is three-dimensional. One of them is in a state in which we find sage Vamadeva his declaration, all that is there in the universe, that am I. He becomes completely egoless. He loses any sense of identification with the body, his activity ceases. Then he attains a particular state of consciousness. In this state, he is no more confined to a single body. All of us can have experience of this state on a small scale. A mother takes upon herself the virtues as well as the vices of her child. The child's sorrow makes her sad. His happiness makes her happy. But this state, this experience of identity in the case of a mother is limited to her child. She takes upon herself the child's faults. A jnani takes upon him the faults of the whole world. He becomes sinner by the sins of the world, and the virtues of the world make him virtuous, and yet he is absolutely untouched by the merits and sins of the world. So like that he goes on explaining about sadhana. How is one to imbibe this state, this last state? The way is to train ourselves not to take upon our shoulders the burden of being the doer of the actions we do. In one of the prayers we read, you remember? O Sadgurudev, all the responsibilities and duties you have showered upon me is yours. No? Let me not think it is mine. We don't know how to make it a reality, but these are all the words on which we have to do some manana and pray to him intensely to make us aware of the real meaning, not the literal meaning, word by word meaning. That we can understand, because we know the language. But that doesn't mean that we have understood the meaning. Transfer of this ownership. Toughest. I just happen to be instrumental. I am not really the doer of action. We should first assume this stand with humility. This, of course, will not immediately result in the complete eradication of the sense of being the doer. It can happen only gradually. Let us first feel that I am nothing, I am just a puppet in his hands. He is moving me. The next step is to feel the activities do not touch the cells. They are of this body. But I am not the transient and mortal body. I am full of divine consciousness. And meditating over this feeling, you should remain completely untouched by the fetters of the body. So this is how the sadhana ends, elimination. So ultimately it is the handing over of the assumed ownership to the real owner. Intellectually it can be put like this. Then we start trying to understand the language. You are there in the form of life force. You have provided me body, mind, intellect, equipment. You have provided a great field. You have provided the necessary thoughts, motivation, and the wherewithal for the fulfillment also are provided by you. Make me aware of this. How to make it intense? Each one of us has to try. Because we should know that we are now talking because he is there in the form of life force. Now and here. We are hearing, we are seeing because he is there. That mysterious power he said, which we call it as life. And life is the expression of Atman. So you are there behind every thought, every word, every deed. You have facilitated everything from within me and without me. If this much becomes a reality in my life, then the sadhana ends. Sadhana as a separate thing ends. My life becomes a sadhana. Life itself becomes a sadhana. Because every time this connection, this prayer, this longing, to bring in the real owner. When I may say, he has said, gradually only it can come. In 1 or 2 items we can try, 2 or 3, 4 items we can try. That is why while chanting Ram Nam, Papa said, he knew that he was empowered, motivated, facilitated to do the chanting by him. In Papa's case, because his faith and the longing was so intense at that time, even at the beginning of, say, 1922, he said, 1920 he started. So it was there. That is why when anybody asked, his father asked, what is the thing that is going on? He said, God made him chant the name. When he was asked by the sadhu in Haridwar or Rishikesh, how is it that in such a short time you were able to, we are chanting for so many years. So Papa points out that they still feel they are chanting the name. So we all feel we are chanting the name, we are doing sadhana. So as long as we do that, we have now at least come to know, realize that it will be always distant. The goal will always be distant. So what sort of inner adjustment we have to make, each one of us has to think, giving due consideration for the limitation of our equipment. But we have been promised that when we go with this prayer, He will open up that which is suitable for our journey. So let us all try to think in those terms. We have been chosen one, we are the privileged ones, no doubt. Otherwise, all these thoughts, how can we have access towards all these Mahatmas without their grace? So they have chosen us. Now we have to prepare for the exam, which can be had only by our own manana. Let us all try to dwell more and more on this and derive the maximum benefit of it. Okay, today is 23rd. Huh? 23rd. So 25th when we meet again, it is the Gita Jayanti day. When we were hearing Swami Chinmayanandaji's lectures, one day he made, what is not in Gita is not worth knowing. That is how we started approaching. Each Mahatma has his own interpretation. Papa himself says, he wrote the Gita Sandesh in 33-34 period. He said in 80 days, every day he used to give dictation. There was a friend from Saurashtra who was here at that time. And then Papa says in probably late 50s or early 60s, now if Ramdas was prompted to write, it will be in a different way. So we accept the different approaches of Mahatma. So if we try to approach Gita, we may find he will open up our approach also. So with that background, we will remember intensely the celestial song Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In order to give a fillip, he prompted a group of devotees to have the chanting. Right from Dhyana Shloka, entire 18 chapters. 18 chapters, we do it as a part of our homage to Gita Mata. But we have to, at the same time, it should not be left there. So we have got tomorrow and day after tomorrow. No? Everyone can approach the different chapters. One sloga or two slogas or three slogas, whatever we are comfortable. If we get aligned with it internally, we may do some intense manana on those slogas. We will hear, just like, Vishnu Sahasranam, we chant the 1008. Out of that 1008, if we get aligned with one, the whole purpose is served. In order that it is placed before us, 1008, so that we know which one to align ourselves. Different taste, different temperament, different inclination, different approach, There can't be any general prescription, general suggestion. So that is why the Lord has placed before us 1008 names. When we keep on chanting these 1008 names, one day, one name, you will get clarity and get aligned with it. Similarly, 18 chapters with 700 odd slokas. It should not become an academic exercise. Apparently, it is an academic exercise. Because at that time of chanting, our concentration will be on the chanting only, not on the theme. Those who are well versed in Sanskrit, yes, they may be able to travel with the theme to a very great extent. Those who are not well conversant, we are not well conversant with Sanskrit. Unless and until we have, some supporting material like the commentaries of others, it will not be difficult. Then probably our own manana can be done. So when we hear this, before we hear this, suppose we make an effort. How to do that? First we will go through the title of the 18 chapters. Which title draws our attention more? Starting from Arjuna Vishada Yoga, right up to the Moksha? Moksha Sannyas. Last one. See, these are all the 18 facts. So the first one is, we start with this, delusion, moha, attachment, the cause of the whole thing, and finally we reach the result. If with this background we go through the title of each and every chapter, and find for ourselves which is the one which is linking. And when it comes that particular chapter, we will concentrate, naturally the tendency will be there to concentrate. Somebody has to do this, 18 chapters of chanting. But rest of us can definitely derive the maximum benefit by doing a little bit of manana and trying to see which chapter, which title is getting aligned in me. For example, we were attracted to the talks on Gita of Vinobaji by the first chapter, the end of the first chapter. That really hooked us. There should be some instrumental cause. When we started reading, it is a book, everybody has written, so what? Even Papa was asked in 60s, have you read talks on Gita? Nowadays, Ramdas has lost interest in reading. Previously, he was interested in reading many things. Then he said, now it's full, then there is no need. So to us, it is not full. So when we take up reading, he says, we will close this with this because let this be the instrumental cause for our going deeper into Bhagavad Gita. So Vinobaji touches these words in the first chapter, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. It reveals Arjuna's straightforwardness and honesty. The word Arjuna in fact means one who is honest and straightforward in nature. He candidly told Krishna all that he felt and thought, hid nothing from him, ultimately surrendered to him totally. In fact, he was already his devotee. When he made Krishna his charioteer and entrusted to him the reins of his horses, he had got ready to give into his hands the reins of his mind also. This is the important. Let us do likewise. Let us not think that unlike Arjuna, we do not have Krishna to guide us. Let us not get caught in the fallacy that Krishna was a historical person. Everybody has Krishna. Residing in his heart as the indwelling self. He is nearer to us than the nearest. Let us bare our heart with all its impurities and weaknesses before him and say, O Lord, I take refuge in you. You are my sole guide, my master. Show me the right path. I shall follow it. If we do so, Arjuna's charioteer will be our charioteer too. We shall hear the Gita from his own lips. He will lead us to victory. See, at the start, we are given a promise. So like this, many of us who are chanting must have access to some commentaries of some Mahatmas. So when we go through the title, we get aligned with one theme, and then we try to go through the commentaries of the great Mahatma. And then when we hear the chanting, we will be applying more and more. We may be able to see some more light, and we will get more and more clarity. Because ultimately, the first to last, we will not find any difference at all. Same theme brought out in different forms. So let us all try to do that. For that we seek the blessings of the Lord, who has come in the form of the Mother, the Divine Mother, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We pray to her, that is Dhyana Sloka, Partaya Pratibodhidam, it starts. And then, in that, we are praying to her to give us the needed push, to keep us in the same tempo, to take advantage of, to derive the fullest benefit of her presence in the form of 700 slokas. So we will also on that day pick out a few slokas, and then we will dwell on it. This is one of the archana we can do, our homage to the Divine Mother, Bhagavad Gita, and pray to her to steadfastly take us from the sense of individuality to the ultimate goal. Hari Om. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. 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 Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai राम जय जय राम। ओम श्री राम जय राम जय जय। हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम हरि ओम।